Yo, what's up, guys? We're about to jump into this video right away. They're short-sighted. Ontario's premier response to praises on Trump's tariffs. So I guess, Ontario's premier. Let's see who Ontario's premier is.
A major escalation in President Trump's trade war with Mexico and Canada. A new order from the White House effectively doubling tariffs on steel and aluminum imports to a whopping 50%.
Oh
I want to discuss this and more with the Premier of Ontario, Doug Ford. The Premier, thank you so much for joining us. President Trump, as you know, says these new tariffs were necessary to protect U.S. industries and U.S. national security. What's your response?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. It's doing the total opposite. It's a $4 billion tax on American products that have steel in them. We know that the cost of any product with steel in them in the U.S. has gone up 16%. We ship in approximately $30 billion of steel from the U.S. We're going to onshore as much as we can. We have great steel manufacturers in Ontario and across the country, like steel beams that build buildings, rebar, all those items. We're going to onshore it and start producing it ourselves. So that's going to cost not only the $4 billion, it's going to cost $30 billion of business, which is equal to tens of thousands of steel workers' jobs. And what I recommend, why don't we have a goal together and say we're going to produce more steel with America and Canada, and we're going to create 250,000 new steel jobs. That's what we need to do rather than penalize Canada. And then look at China. They're shipping in cheap steel, slapping made in Mexico stickers on, or other countries, and shipping it into the US and Canada and costing American and Canadian jobs.
So you're putting forward a serious proposal, but how do you think the Canadian government should respond?
Well, I've highly recommended to the Prime Minister directly that we slap another 25% on top of our tariffs to equal President Trump's tariffs on our steel. You know, he has to start looking around the world at China and other locations that are taking Chinese steel and really stop the flow of steel. That's the problem. Canada is not the problem. Again, we purchased 30 billion with a B of steel off the U.S. and that's going to come to an end real quick.
I know you said yesterday, Premier, that a trade deal between the U.S. and Canada is, quote, in your words, very close. How much do you see these new tariffs complicating these ongoing negotiations?
Well, it just seems with President Trump, it's 5 steps forward and 10 steps backwards, and that doesn't help. It doesn't help the situation. Again, it's going to add $4 billion tax, I call it, on the backs of Americans. They're going to pay a lot more for any products with steel in them, and that's unacceptable. It's working against his philosophy, and it's unfortunate that he's taking this route against Canada.
There's a new acronym, you may have heard it, that's being used by some investors and Democrats here in the U.S. to describe the president's on-again, off-again tariff policies. That word TACO, T-A-C-O, which stands for Trump always chickens out. Do you think it's likely that President Trump, will back down once again once we start to see the impact of these tariffs on the markets and on the cost of products?
I'm just hoping, for the sake of the American people, that I wouldn't say chickens out. I would just say let's come to our senses and start working together. We're so much stronger together. I propose the AMCAN Fortress, American Canadian Fortress, put a ring around it, and would all be more prosperous and safer and wealthier. That's what we need to do. We need to focus on that, opposed to constantly attacking. And we're the strongest ally, number one customer, as the U.S. is our number one customer. And I'm just dumbfounded the approach he's taking. He's lumping us in with every other country in the world, and that's unfortunate.
That's not
he's
acceptable.
taking that avenue.
It's hard to believe the
It's not
U.S.-Canadian
acceptable.
relationship has deteriorated as it has. Before I let you go, Premier, a quick question. I want to ask you about the rise in anti-Semitic incidents we're certainly seeing here in the United States and indeed around the world. I know Ontario, especially Toronto, has a large Jewish community. How are you dealing with this rise in anti-Jewish hate?
Well, I have zero tolerance for any hate, any discrimination of any kind. I stand with Israel. I stand with the Jewish community. Everyone should be living peacefully, and I'm just tired of all these protests that are happening. I always say the anti-Semitic, slurs and attacks is unacceptable. If you want to attack anyone within the community, go back and start attacking within your own country. Don't bring your problems over to Canada. I'm sick and tired of it. We have 110 nationalities. Everyone needs to get along. And I say that by the way, for any religion. Let's live peacefully together. And I think we'll all have a great life. But when it comes to racism, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, anything, I don't stand for it.
That's right.
Yeah, good point.
I like him.
Pamela has a quick question for you as well, Premier.
Yeah, because we're seeing some reaction from industry groups and steel companies today to President Trump's increase of 50% on steel, and they are applauding this. They're saying, look, this is going to help American steel workers and producers. They are happy about this move. So what do you say to them and to Americans who are applauding this and say that this is good for American workers?
Well, it might sound good, but they can't see the forest beyond the trees. They're short-sighted, and when we start onshoring $30 billion, tens of thousands of jobs in the steel sector in the U.S., they're going to wake up quickly. And all it is, he's throwing another $4 billion tax, I call it, on the backs of the American people. This doesn't work. The philosophy doesn't work. It may sound good, but wait until we start onshoring everything from steel beams to rebar to every steel product. I've asked for a list of every product that we ship in, and then we're going to start producing it here ourselves, which is unfortunate. It's a shame.
Right.
Ontario Premier Doug Ford, frequent visitor, frequent guest here in the Situation Room, and a good friend. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Wolf, Pamela. Great to see
Thank
both of you.
you.
Thank you.
The steel industry is obviously very happy with what they're seeing. That means that they can see a boost in steel and aluminum production on a local level. But I wonder who's going to pay the ultimate price for these tariffs that are now coming into effect.
Yeah, Eleni, that is one of the big questions right now because, look, these are very aggressive tariffs. This is all designed to try to revive the Rust Belt. But look at where we are right now when it comes to steel and aluminum tariffs. So the U.S. had already imposed 25% tariffs as of February, and now at 50%. Some context, this is the highest level of U.S. tariffs on steel and aluminum since at least the 1930s. Now, what we're seeing is a reaction from the U.S. steel sector. All of these stocks shot higher earlier this week. On the week, we're talking about double-digit gains for Steel Dynamics, Nucor. Look at this, Cleveland-Cliffs up by 30% so far this week. This is because investors are betting that tariffs are now high enough that they are going to crowd out foreign competition. But to your point, look, steel and aluminum, these are critical inputs for a variety of products, right? Cars and trucks, home appliances, machinery, aircraft, building material, food and beverage cans. We're hearing from the can manufacturing industry warning that this could increase prices at the grocery store for U.S. consumers. Cars and trucks, I've seen estimates that the price of cars and trucks could go up by at least hundreds of dollars, perhaps even thousands of dollars. And what's really important to remember is that although it's true that the steel sector in the U.S. is much smaller than it was and that employment is way down, it's also true that there's a lot more people that work for companies that make all of these items than work for the steel industry. And there's a risk that these people who work in this industry, that they could be hurt by higher input costs. And that is the point from University of Michigan economist Justin Wolfers. Take a listen to what he had to say.
What this is going to do is jack up the price of steel, which then jacks up the price of inputs for American manufacturers. We've actually seen this movie once before, Jake. In 2018, the exact same movie. Trump raised tariffs on steel, saved 1,000 steel jobs, which sounds terrific until you realize that the higher cost of steel costs 75 times as many jobs elsewhere in the manufacturing sector.
So that is the concern here, right? That you could end up saving steel jobs at the cost of manufacturing jobs elsewhere in the economy. Now, the administration says that they're doing this because they're trying to protect national security and really safeguard the defense supply chain. But it's also important to note that we get a lot of steel and aluminum from U.S. allies, right? The leading source of steel imports into the U.S. last year was Canada, followed by Brazil, Mexico, and South Korea, all of them considered U.S. allies.
And we're treating Canada like this,
right? More than half of all U.S. imports of aluminum came from Canada.
So why are we treating our good friends, our best friends, if you ask me, like this? Why are we doing this to them?
And it's tough to make that national security argument there. Now, no matter where the steel and aluminum is coming from, we're already seeing a price impact. The producer price index, this is wholesale inflation, showed that steel prices soared by 6% between March and April alone. This is a very significant increase, especially when you consider the fact that overall inflation was actually declining between March and April. So this is some early evidence of tariff-driven price increases. Ultimately, when does this really hit consumers and by how much? I think that remains up for debate, but it's far easier to see how this could increase costs than lower them.
Donald Trump has lost his mind, bro. Why are we doing our friends like this? It's going to cost jobs. This just don't make sense. I agree with Doug Ford. Everything will be better if we work together. Why you do? You know, we're your best customers. You're our best customer. We can't treat each other like this. And then he said that China is bringing that steel in through Mexico and slapping made in Mexico tags on the steel just to avoid paying. Come on, bro. Yeah, come on, man. We getting the runaround by China. No, but it's another word I'm looking for. I can't find it. But yeah, let me know what you guys thought about this video, man. This is crazy that Trump has raised it 25%. I'm gonna be real with you, to 50%. But it's crazy that he's doing this to Canada. I just don't understand why he's being so harsh on Canada, you know. Like Mr. Ford said, you go 5 steps forward with Trump and 10 steps backwards. It's crazy. It's crazy. Let me know, guys. Let me know.